Max Scherzer makes his long-awaited return as the Blue Jays get set for the upcoming trade deadline. Hey everyone, welcome into Long Ball. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Blue Jays writer Rob Longley. And Rob, we'll get to Max Scherzer in a moment, who was back on the mound wearing a Blue Jays uniform for the first time in a long time. But as I mentioned, the trade deadline is coming up in about 5 weeks or so, and still lots to be decided, of course. But the Blue Jays sitting pretty good right now in a wild card spot, and the expectation is if this continues, they will be a buyer at the trade deadline. How big of a buyer remains to be seen, but we know Anthony Santander, Dalton Varsho are going to return at some point. You look at Max Scherzer and Eric Lauer, the job that they've done in the starting rotation. They've sort of solidified that, at least for the time being. If you look into your crystal ball, Rob, when we're looking at the trade deadline, do you feel as though the Blue Jays are going to be looking for a bat, or are they going to be looking for an arm?
Well, first things first, Rob, I would expect that they're going to be shoppers in some form. You don't sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a $500 million extension on a year that Chris Bassett and Bo Bichette are about to become free agents and not have a sense of going mostly all in, right? And as you mentioned, they've played themselves into the wild card spot, and really, as we sit here today, are at least fringe contenders for the division, given the way the Yankees have played and the surge that the Jays have made, and the fact that we've got a 4-game series in Toronto next week with the Yankees in town. So, yeah, I fully expect them to be buyers, and what they look for will be interesting. But I would expect, or I think it would be the right way to go, that if they were to be aggressive shoppers. And by that, I mean you look at adding a bat, because you mentioned Varsho's coming back, and you mentioned that Santander's coming back. Well, Varsho spent a lot of time on the injury list over the last year. Santander has done nothing since becoming a Blue Jay. He was invisible for his first month and a half, 2 months of the season, and now he's going to be starting from scratch again. So how long is it going to take him to get back up to speed? And there's still a question mark of how much he can contribute. So I think you look at adding a bat in some form. Full credit to the guys at the bottom end of manager John Schneider's order for contributing in the way that they have. But if this team is going to have any success, they're going to need the top of the order to contribute. Pitching wise, I mean, you hear it all the time in baseball. You can never have enough pitching. And for the first half of the season, we saw that rotation wise, with, as you mentioned, essentially being a 4-man rotation with Scherzer injured and Bowden Francis struggling. So I think, at worst, you want to add some sort of depth arm, whether it's a guy that you can shuffle back up from between here and Buffalo. But I think you would look for a starting pitching arm, and more importantly, more pressing likely is something for the bullpen. We've seen some sort of regression in the bullpen, some flaws exposed over the last month or so. Part of that's performance-wise. Part of that is workload-wise. That's why Yimi Garcia went to the injured list. I mean, that's why we're seeing some of the wobbles, perhaps, with Jeff Hoffman. So, I think one from each of those areas. Get a bat. Probably an outfielder would be ideal. Get some starting depth and get an impact reliever. And let's see if they can make a serious run, not just at a wild card spot and perhaps even winning a playoff game for the first time in forever, but maybe even chase down the division in what could be a pretty exciting final month of the season.
Well, it's nice to be able to talk about buying, because we all remember last year we were talking about selling and how many Blue Jays were going to be out the door. I mentioned Max Scherzer before, and he finally was back on the hill for the Blue Jays. His first start since March 29th, when he lasted just a couple of innings in his Blue Jays season debut. 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 3 walks against the Cleveland Guardians. Rob, what do you think the expectation is for him the rest of the way? The thumb is clearly going to be not an issue, but it's going to be lingering. It's not going to completely go away. But how should the Blue Jays fans and maybe the team feel as far as expectations for Scherzer the rest of the way here?
Yeah, first of all, I love the transparency of Max Scherzer. He's all about, he was I thought very good in his first outing. There was a couple of maybe he wasn't as sharp as he is when he's at his best, but certainly enough signs, performance and stuff wise. I mean, his velocity was up to 94 on the fastball, which was pretty good for a 40-year-old arm. There were enough positive signs to suggest that This guy can be a very serious impact dude in that rotation if he continues this. But the transparency that I speak of with Scherzer is like they won't really know until today. I mean, the day after that outing, he'll tell the team training staff and coaching staff how his thumb feels. And I think even more importantly will be the next day that he gets on a mound to throw a side session. I guess it'll be in Boston this weekend, and to see how everything works again. Like, is the shoulder fine? Is the thumb fine? Does he feel strong? He hasn't thrown a lot in the last couple of years, so presumably his arm should feel good and fresh. But it's all about what happens with that thumb and how he bounces back from it. So projecting that forward, what would the expectations be? Well, the hope anyway would be that not only would he be a guy who could take the ball basically every 5 days, but can build upon what he did in that first start last night and be an impact arm. I mean, this guy, you just watch him work. He's so savvy. He's so studied. Like, he has a book, I feel like, on every pitcher, every batter that he's facing, and he really finds a way to outmaneuver them. It's a game to him, and it's not just pitching. It's trying to go head to head against every batter he faces and winning the battle mentally and physically. And if you can have that kind of competitiveness, performing at a high level, it could be a huge impact for this team. Especially when we're talking about the final weeks of the season, when things get a little pretty tense around baseball and you're chasing down various things. He's already had an impact on the pitching staff, just being around them on a daily basis in that clubhouse. But if he can do it from the mound as well, this could be a fairly large development for the Blue Jays.
Well, that's why the team signed him to that deal in the offseason to try to bring that impact, like you said, and it's nice to see him back on the hill for the Blue Jays. We'll see how things go over the next couple of weeks here for Max Scherzer. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Rob Longley, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.